Evening, everybody. Welcome to the May 5th, 2025 meeting of the Litchfield Capital Improvement Committee. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So I guess we'll start with you, Jay. You can make introductions. We'll go around the table. How's that?
Jay Minkara, NRPC.
Brian Burke, Budget Rep.
Michael Croto, Planning Board.
Kimberly Queen and Selectmen's Rep.
Kim Kleiner, Town Administrator.
And I believe Mr. Plansky is not here from the school this evening, and Mr. Stone, our Citizens Rep, is not here. So that does create a little bit of a challenge in terms of quorum, because we do need 3 according to our bylaws. First item on the agenda is public input. Does anyone have any public input before we get started tonight? Okay. Hearing none, I will close public input. And we'll go to the approval of the minutes of April 7th. Did anyone have an opportunity to take a look at those? Well, obviously we don't have a quorum, so so I guess we'll table those. So sorry about that. Okay. So tonight, I guess we do have some folks here for interviews for CIP Citizens Representative, because my understanding, Ms. Colby stepped down from as the Citizens Rep for the Capital Improvement Committee. So we are looking for a new Citizens Rep. We have 2 on the board, one who's current, Mr. Stone, and then another. Given, unfortunately, that we don't have a quorum this evening, I'll defer to Ms. Kleiner how you would like to proceed on that basis. So.
Thank you. So at the last Board of Selectmen meeting, the board asked us if we would interview the applicants, but they did want the 3 applicants to go forward to the select board, and then they will vote at the select board level.
Okay. So, I mean, certainly, I know that we cannot vote because we don't have a quorum, but does that mean, could they come forward and just introduce themselves this evening? And then obviously we'll defer them to the Board of Selectmen for approval, guys. So
I think about 3 here, that'd be a great idea. Plus, we can just have the other members of this board watch it on YouTube, so they'll at least see the interview process.
Absolutely. So I guess I'll start with Brian Johnson. Is Brian Johnson here? Hi, Brian. Why don't you come to the table and introduce yourselves to the board or the committee?
Is this on already? Okay.
Yeah.
Brian Johnson. I've lived in Litchfield for pretty much my whole life since I was about
What
4.
address?
1 Finch Court,
Okay.
right over across from Dara there.
Okay.
Been there for pretty much my whole life since I was 4. I've spent a couple years in Manchester, but I'm back there now. So.
Okay. What interests you about the Capital Improvement Committee?
Well, I kind of just saw that you guys were like looking for a citizen member, and I wanted to get involved with the Litchfield government.
Okay.
I don't know. Yeah, just. Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? Kim, do you have any questions?
Let me.
Frank, tell us about your background, like how that might apply to this position.
Like with my work, or I don't know that I have any like specific special knowledge, but I've been a blue collar worker all my life. There's I think a lot of people in town that are kind of like me, in their 20s, 30s, back at home with our parents. So I think I kind of have like a perspective that there's a good amount of people in town that have a similar perspective. Other than that, I don't know that I have any like special background that I would apply. I don't even honestly know like exactly what this committee does necessarily, but I did just, I saw that actually this was one of the first meetings I watched was when you guys were talking about having to get a new member. So I was like, oh, okay, that seems like a good place to start, and how often do you get an opportunity to become a voting member of a committee in town? Doesn't happen that often, so I decided I'll try and get involved.
Okay. Kim, did you have something?
Oh, yeah, well, I was kind of going to go with that direction, but do you feel comfortable looking at spreadsheets and some numbers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not like a necessarily like a math guy, but yeah, I'm savvy enough, I think, to pretty much learn anything I need to learn, I think, for this.
So we typically meet, usually, let's say probably once a month after town meeting, typically, or when we're available, I guess. And we're basically a subcommittee. The Board of Selectmen, well, let me back up. The town, a couple of years ago, voted to create a capital improvement plan. And a committee was created under the Board of Selectmen, because it was the Board of Selectmen that the town chose to sort of manage that process, and to create a committee to deal with the planning process in terms of capital improvements, which are basically town improvements, usually infrastructure specifically. The reason that a capital improvement committee was created was basically so that the town could, by statute, because it is by statute, to get impact fees. And you have to have a capital improvement plan to have impact fees. So one of the things that in the capital, with a capital improvement plan, is looking at different projects within town. Maybe its department heads have certain, they want to acquire a fire engine, or they want to acquire something. Usually the expenditure is over 50,000, but the board has considered bundling those certain projects depending upon, like the library, for example. Some of their stuff doesn't go above 50,000, but we've allowed them to come before the board to do that, to sort of bundle their projects. So they can do that and come before us. What happens is typically what we do is sort of prioritize those projects. So once we have all of the information from department heads and boards about what they want to see on the plan, then what we do is we rank those, we prioritize those projects according to whether they're urgent, whether they're necessary, whether they should be deferred to another time, etc. And that's really how the process goes, and that's really what we do. And at the end of the process, Jay, who's with NRPC, creates a spreadsheet showing what the capital plan looks like, and it's a 6-year plan, so it's out for 6 years, and what that's going to look like. And essentially, that plan goes to the board once it's been approved by the Capital Improvement Committee. It goes to the Board of Selectmen. Board of Selectmen would decide what it is that they want to do in terms of capital improvements, whether they're going to have warrant articles, whether they're going to do, they're going to have money. They have a grant maybe to, buy a fire truck or something, for example, or whatever. Those types of things, it's really up to the Board of Selectmen at that point. It's in their hands, and whether they're going to go forward with the capital expenditure or they're going to keep it on the plan. It's a living, breathing document, so it's always updated to make sure that if there are projects that may not get to a warrant article, or they may not, they're not for this, because there may be an expense that the town can't afford, they'll stay on the plan, and at least another 6 years you can review it. So that's just a quick synopsis of what we do as a board, just give you an idea, and that's really what we're all about here. So
Gotcha.
Unless anyone has anything they want to add, I hope I didn't.
It's both the school side and the town side, and it's not just equipment; it's buildings.
The school side and the town. What does that mean?
So we have all the department heads and the school come in,
Okay.
And they tell us what they believe they need on this
Gotcha.
plan.
Okay. Okay. So they're two, like the town and the school kind of operate as two separate entities?
Yep, the school
We are.
committees usually,
Okay.
not the committee, we usually have two people here from the school as well.
Okay.
Yes, you're operating under two different employer identification numbers.
Okay.
So when you're at the town level, they are separate entities,
Gotcha.
although taxed together.
So, I mean, do you have any questions for us? I don't know if anyone else has anything.
No, I think like that explanation probably would have answered any question that, I would have had at this point. So,
Well, I think that's great. I think it's great that you want to, have the opportunity to volunteer, and we do appreciate that. And
I appreciate the opportunity.
so I think what's going to happen is, typically what would happen is, if we had a quorum, we would recommend you to go to the Board of Selectmen. But what we're going to do tonight, you're just going to bypass that and go directly to the Board of Selectmen. And they're the ones that.
$200.
Yeah, right, exactly. And you can, they can do the approval process, and we'll see. And that's basically how that's going to work. So.
Sounds great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.
If we can, that's what I'll ask all three while you're here. If we can, I'd like to put you on the agenda for Monday night. 6:30.
Next Monday.
Next Monday. That's when the selectmen meet.
Very good. Next person I have is Ronald Oblinus. Oblinus. Oh. Was it?
Venus.
Yes.
Oh, can we just say?
Oblinus.
I'm sorry. Sound different.
Well, if it does, maybe it's just me. I don't know.
Brian, you don't know who I am, do you?
No.
Hi, Ron Blinas, how are you?
So I guess state your name and address and.
Yes, Ron Blinas, 15 River Circle. Been here since 1989. And as talking with Jay, retired in 2017 and recently have spent a fair amount of time trying to understand some of the things that are going on in town, including the capital improvement process.
Okay. Can you give us a little background about yourself?
Sure. I've been in engineering-related services. That's my degree. And worked for railroads in New England for 20 years in engineering. Managed capital projects all the way from planning to doing them to responding to emergencies and buildings, including buildings and right-of-ways. Then went into consulting work, and as Jay knows, did a lot of things all the way from the planning and feasibility studies for transit-related, particularly in this area, worked on one of the iterations of the look at the commuter rail project. Hopefully someday gets into New Hampshire. And in that role, again, did all the way from planning up through to design and implementation. Worked a lot with states in New England, familiar with the STIP process, which I think is similar to what we're doing here. Essentially, it's a tool to try to identify, we'll call it early, the projects that are in the pipeline, and using this process as some way to at least get things categorized and view for the future as to what might be coming. And obviously, I think one of the things that I'm interested in is helping, and maybe it seems like this committee's not been formed too many years, and I think there's been some organizational questions, how it functions. I think I'd like to be able to help, maybe, I won't say smooth some of the things out, but make it a little more efficient and effective. And I view this process as helping identify early on what they are, so that it is a place where the understanding of what is being looked at from a town and school perspective, how it, if I understand, and I believe your charter is to be the process of the clearinghouse, if you will, up front. And then look to prioritize those things as they become more real.
Thank you very much. Did anyone else have any questions?
So Ron, I think, I don't know if everyone on this board knows, but you're pretty heavily involved right now with the improve,
The FIC, Facility Improvement.
Facilities improvement.
Yes.
So, do you see any conflict with those two?
Actually, I don't. And again, that's a little bit trying to help maybe define the role of this committee versus, let's say that committee as a for instance. And if I can just elaborate, if you don't mind. This committee, I would envision be looking at identifying things that are coming up without having the details yet. So as a for instance, previously there was the new school, and now there's GMS improvements on the budget. So at this point, that is simply just a placeholder, recognizing that something needed to be done. So the work I'm doing in the FIC is not directly related in the sense that I don't see this committee having the authority nor the even the recommendation action on these things. It is simply trying to gather things and ask enough questions so that you can define what projects are at a certain point in time. So the work in the FIC is really looking at, okay, what do we actually do? So if, as a for instance, on this committee, at this point, you have need to put in something. The new school, as you know, has now been withdrawn as an option. So that comes off. So a placeholder has to go on. So it simply is a placeholder for some GMS. And that's what the FIC is looking at. So simply recognizing and saying, okay, we need to do something. And at this level is, I'll say, separated substantively from the work I'm hopefully participating in the FIC.
Yeah, it is a concern because that's not our role here. Is the department head in the school comes to us and says what they need. We do ask if you have grants or how they're going to approach it. I agree. But you have weighed in on the school. You've weighed in on the police department. And again, that's not our role here. I just don't want that coming into play here because you will be a voting member.
And that's the reason I go back to, I believe the role of this committee has not been well defined, nor the process.
If I can just disagree with you, Ron,
I do too.
fully disagree with you.
Yeah.
Again, I think what she's trying to say is the selectmen or all the different departments, thank you, will come forward to the select board, present what their needs are, then they'll come to us and present that. And really all we do is prioritize where they should be as a board.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
Whether or not they go forward, that's not our responsibility.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Nor is it in our thought process like, well, no, you don't need a police department. We're not going to vote for that, or it's not even a matter of voting for the police department. It's a matter of voting where it is in the priority listing.
Correct. And I'll give you the example that let's talk about the police department. If you remember, I actually came to you, and because the first place that the police department proposal for the upcoming warrant was presented was to this group, and that's wrong.
Not true.
No.
Not true.
Well, okay, I disagree with you because the Board of Selectmen are not acted upon it yet. And so therefore I came to speak to what I considered problems with it that the Board of Selectmen should have been answering prior to it coming here.
So and I know, you have the engineering mind, and you made some great recommendations if the town hall was kept and all of that. But again, we can't tell the school what to do. They're going to come to us and say they have a need. But if you disagree with they want something, and you've done all the engineering work and you have a different conclusion, that's what I'm afraid that you've weighed in twice. You've weighed in at the facilities meeting. So that's really my question. Can it be independent? So you do come up with great ideas. I agree to that. But it's not our job to say, well, if the police chief wants a new building, it's not our job to say, hey, you had a better plan to just renovate the town hall. That's not, I don't think you can bring that to this board. That's not what we want.
And that's my point exactly, is the way the process worked for the police station, I really do think failed. And the reason being is I kept asking the chairman of the Board of Selectmen, what's going on with the police station? His answer was, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. The first time the proposal was presented was at this committee.
We've seen it over the years.
No,
10 years.
you can ask Mr. Leary, because I kept asking him, what is being presented? He said, I don't know. I don't know. This was all the way through last year.
But he's been in front of us all the time, the
So
police chief.
the police chief laid out a timeline. The new police building had been in front of the Board of Selectmen for a period of 10 years on and off.
It had, but what
Then Mr. French and I came to this board and asked for $30,000 to bring on an engineer to update the needs assessment. That also went back to the Board of Selectmen, and they saw that on the plan the year before that Mr. Curto presented, so they knew that we were moving forward with the needs assessment. Somehow that got lost in the process, and we have now decided that anything that is presented here at the capital improvement will be forwarded to the selectmen, so they know meeting by meeting what we are being shown, so that doesn't get lost in the future.
And that's fair to your point.
And that's
because it did
exactly-
fall off the radar. It did, because we didn't have that paper. But the plans have been in front of us all along. We had, unfortunately, had Mr. French passed away. We had to go hire another chief. There was a drop of time.
Yeah.
But you are correct, and that's one of the things we are trying to correct, is get it right to the Board of Selectmen so they know what is coming in from the department heads.
And so that's my point, is had that gone that way, had there been the discussion that occurred first here at the Board of Selectmen, then that would have been fine. That this board would simply have accepted what the Board of Selectmen said, okay, that's what we want to do. Then it would come to you and say, yes, that's the appropriate thing to put on the board. And I would respond to that if that's what the Board of Selectmen wanted. My point simply is that in my mind, the Board of Selectmen or the school department should, before anything comes here, vetted what they are going to put on this capital improvement plan. And if they don't do it, it's really difficult for this committee to make determinations without the supporting board knowing. That's all my point is that the process I think needs to be improved, and that's where I think I can add value to this committee.
I think it could be improved, but I mean, the school's been going on for 4 or 5 years. We can't wait on a plan.
And at the same time, we didn't decide to put it on the CIP plan until it was presented and it was approved by the select board to come forward here. I mean, the police department basically just did a presentation of a police department that they thought they could get passed, and then they brought it to the select board. Now, whether or not they did it in that order, and I'm not saying they did or didn't, but it was a presentation that was given to us, and it went nowhere with us until after it came back and was approved by the select board.
Right. And I'm saying the process shouldn't be that way. And I'm simply just would like to participate and support getting the process. We'll call it efficient.
And it won't happen again, like Mrs. Kleiner spoke
And I
a
appreciate
few
that.
moments ago.
Kim, I appreciate it.
So my concern with this is not that the information shouldn't go to the select board, but if we had waited and we had missed the CIP, then impact fees aren't being calculated for that police station, and there is a need. So it could come here to the CIP committee, and it could be prioritized into the list. That's totally acceptable and should be done, because that's what you're calculating your impact fees on. And then it could go to the Board of Selectmen and not go any further. That has totally been the case for many years. The two are different. The action here does not mean it goes to a warrant article. That process here does not mean it becomes a viable project in front of the voters. They're two different things. This is so that it can be on the list because it's an identified need that impact fees should be created. Whether it goes forward, that's for the select board or the school board to decide.
And I agree with that fully.
And we don't vet the projects. So when the police chief or the school department or whomever it is coming forward and they've done their needs assessment or their calculation of what it will cost, it's not our job to question them on the details of the project. Other than normal.
Agreed.
So I'll read one sentence in favor, one kind of with what you're saying, and then one that pulls it back, just from our bylaws. Capital improvements program shall classify projects according to the urgency and need for realization and shall recommend a time sequence for implementation. The program may also contain an estimated cost, it's the word may, for each project, probable operating and maintenance costs, probable revenues if there are any. It says the program shall be based on information submitted by the departments and agencies of the municipality and should take account into the public facilities needs and their perspective. But again, it comes from them. We can't say, we don't agree with that. It's the number. Now, we will ask, can you get grants? Is it a warrant article? You know, what's your balance in your account? So again, I'm just looking at the bylaws. So they can if they want to, but we can't stall it forever here.
I'm not sure.
So it says they may put an estimated cost if they want to. They have to put some number there. But it doesn't mean we weigh in on what that number is.
I'm sorry if you think I'm implying that
I'm just,
I would weigh in and say that's not right.
well, I don't, that's why I'm saying I don't want a conflict of that, because you've done a lot of work with the school facilities and you've done a lot with the the police station. So that's my concern. You've already made a decision. So you're going to be asked to vote on it. And if the school department head comes in here and wants something else that you didn't want on the facilities, is that a conflict? Because you can't do that. You have to do what they say. We just have to rank what they want.
I understand this committee's purpose is to put something in this plan for the town.
To get the fees, the impact fee.
Yes. And I will pledge to you that if someone comes in and says, this is what we want to do, this is what the school department is recommending, I will look at that and say, yes, I'm not going to challenge what they're presenting.
So if they come in, and I'm not saying, Brian, please, I'm just doing it hypothetical. If they say it's 60 million and you think it should be 25 million, you have to go with what they,
Yes, I will agree with.
I mean, it's the other way around. It's the same with Brian, you know that.
I agree. At this point, this committee is not here to do what the FIC is doing. This committee is to take what is being presented by the respective boards and departments and say, this is what we want. And this job is to put all of those requests in a ranking and prioritize those based upon the overall plan from a school and town perspective. And that's what I believe this is. And all I'm saying is that for that to happen, the people presenting here have to have, in my opinion, they have to go through the proper channels before they come to us. I'm sorry to use the police station, but as Kim said, there was an engineering done authorized by the Board of Selectmen. And I kept asking the chairman, what's happening with that? I understand they're gonna bring a warrant article. I don't know. It showed up here on the agenda, the presentation of what was going to happen. And that was the first time it was presented. And all my point is, if you remember, I was here and I said, this is not the place this should be here. This should be in front of the Board of Selectmen. And I'm simply saying, I believe participation on the board would help solve that.
But the Board of Selectmen isn't going to get into the details of that kind of cost. We all agreed we needed, it's been on the plan for how long? 10, 15 years? We were waiting for the numbers from the current engineer to get updated, right? Because the plans were old. That's when it went back out, so there was a time lag there. So I can't speak to why Mr. Leary said that. I don't know why he said that.
Well,
But he knew it was coming because
But I think it's two
We
different
didn't-
things. It's still two different things.
think
So
we're
the
getting-
selectmen are not weighing in on what goes on to the plan for the impact fees. That's not what they're weighing in on. The selectmen are weighing in on afterwards whether or not that is a project they intend to move forward for a warrant article or whatever funding is being. They are not necessarily approving everything we put on the CIP plan for the impact fees.
all right,
They-
with a 6-year view, we're looking
Yeah.
6
until,
years out.
until it's presented by CIP and asked
Usually we
for.
present to the Board
Yeah.
of Selectmen. And
let me ask you a question then.
so I think I do appreciate all the input and information, but I do want to get to the other candidates tonight, and I want to thank you for coming in. I do appreciate the knowledge and information. I think you have a vast amount of knowledge. It sounds like you certainly know your stuff. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask that it probably be referred to the Board of Selectmen, I guess the next meeting, and I guess, which is next Monday, I understand. And so you can go before the Board of Selectmen and obviously,
Can I ask one last question, just point of clarification?
sure.
Is it standard process for individual departments within the town or I guess the school doesn't have individual departments like the town does. Is it normal for, say, the highway department just to come in here on their own and present something without going to the Board of Selectmen?
That's a good question. That's
Would you
the
like
select
me
board
to?
on Monday.
There's the boss right there.
They
all answer to her.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll give you a for instance of capital improvement plan in my last. So the capital improvement plan in the city operated in the same manner. The mayor and the board of aldermen were not in the room. It went through finance, it went through a capital improvement committee, which included some citizens. A plan was created of needs. And when I say a plan, I mean a book. And from that book, 1, 2, maybe 3 things would actually go forward. And especially when you're talking about a municipality that has very limited funding, especially for large projects. So it's kind of like gathering this big vast of information, right? Because that's what these departments have said that they need. But until it's actually moved forward for a vote to be funded, the decision makers, the governing body, then weighs in. Then that's their turn. They decide of all those projects, what is the most important and what should move forward. So I look at us as the gathering of information, and we place our priorities. The priorities of this committee may be nowhere near the priorities of the governing body. That's up to them in the end. But certainly there have been projects that have come forward from department heads that the Board of Selectmen would hear about when Mr. Curto presents.
Okay.
Well, I thank you, Mr. Lunas, for coming in. Thank you. The next applicant we have is Michael Parker. Parker, why don't you come forward?
yourself.
My name is Mike Parker. I live at 12 Nesmith Court. We bought our house in May. We moved here in September to get closer to 3 grandchildren. One son grandson in Nashua and 2 in Boxford, Massachusetts. Why am I here? I want to get involved in the community. I've been involved in the community back from my previous life in Leavenworth, Kansas, and I want to get involved here, and I saw this as an opportunity to get involved. What skills and background do I bring? 29 years in the Army. Probably the job that I had that most mirrors responsibilities and things that I can bring to this committee was as the Chief of Staff at Fort Stewart in Georgia. We had 20,000 soldiers. We had 60,000 family members. We had a $2.5 million budget. We were responsible for not only training and deployments, but also for infrastructure on the installation. When I retired from the Army, I went to work for FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. I was a federal coordinating officer. I was deployed, appointed by the president and deployed on 40 different disasters throughout the United States in, 7 states, 21 tribal areas, and everything from floods and tornadoes to hurricanes, etc. What I saw and what I experienced was communities at their worst trying to rebuild, and trying to rebuild in an orderly fashion, trying to rebuild, prioritizing. So what goes first? Does the school go first? Does the town hall go first? Does the police department go first? What are the priorities for putting it back together? Because you can't boil the ocean. You can't do it all at once. Now, one thing I did find in both jobs is that you got to be ready. And I noticed from your minutes from the last meeting, there was a comment about having things ready for grants, projects on the shelf. I pride myself both in FEMA and in the Army of having projects on the shelf ready to go. So at the end of the fiscal year in the Army doesn't close at midnight at your installation. It closes at midnight at the farthest west. So if the folks in Hawaii have extra money and I'm in Georgia, I can take that money from Hawaii and use it for projects in Georgia. And so for 2.5 years as the chief, we did that every budget year to bring money in and to get projects done because we were ready. And the same thing with FEMA is having those ready to go. My staff, I always told them to do what was legal, what was allowable, and what was right. So at the end of the day, we could stand the scrutiny of an audit because those auditors will come in 3 to 5 years and snatch all that money back. That's me.
Very good. Brian, do you have any questions?
Michael, was it Kentucky you said that you resided?
Kansas.
Kansas, I'm sorry.
Kansas.
But you said you were in local government?
No, I was not. I was involved in my community with a number of volunteer activities. I did work for a period of time during COVID with the Mid-America Regional Council at Kansas City. It's Kansas City and the 9 counties that surround Kansas City. And I was the operations chief responsible for information about COVID and supplying that information to community leaders so they could make decisions on what next steps to take for the COVID.
Very good. Kim? Yeah.
We're gonna have a conflict with 2 FEMAs?
No.
Okay, just making sure. Just making sure. We have another person on the committee with
Well,
FEMA,
he's a
with them, sort of.
contractor.
Yeah.
It's not
Well, I just want to make sure there's no conflict.
Have you met the Litchfield veterans?
Pardon me?
Have you met the Litchfield veterans group?
No, I haven't. I haven't yet. The, I'm working my way into things little by little.
Who's
May 10th.
he reminds me very much. You should visit and ask for Mr. Jacques.
Okay.
You have a very
There's-
similar background.
May 10th, right? Isn't there a?
I'll do the plug. Yes, May 10th. Across the way here, they have installed 6 granite pedestals, one for each conflict, and the pedestals contain information from the conflict, and of those who served. So Saturday at 10:30, we will have a dedication, and we are expecting state officials to be present. So.
Very nice.
Well, we'll have a lot of veterans there, obviously. So if you want to come on in.
That's great. Well, thank you very much.
Well, I thank you for your
Appreciate
time,
it.
and I
Yes,
hope I
absolutely.
can provide what's needed.
All right.
We would like you involved.
Okay, yes, so we'll definitely
always-
forward him to.
Yes.
Monday.
And if not here, maybe somewhere else. I don't know.
There's always opportunities.
Absolutely, yes.
Lots of
Yes.
board openings.
Lots of opportunities for your experience.
Thank you very
Board
much.
alternate.
Thank you all three. Thanks all
All
three.
three of you, thank you for coming in.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
great to see this, and best of luck to all of you. So,
We start at 6:30 on Monday night. And I'm gonna put you first on the agenda, so that we can get you in and out, because that's a long board. It's a long night.
Is it?
Not as,
Haven't seen it.
not even like this committee.
well, thank you all.
Yes, definitely.
Said that Veterans Park ceremony is at 10:30.
10:30 on Saturday. Yes.
It's right across the town hall, right?
Right
Right
across,
the parking
right
lot.
across the way.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I hope they're not too loud.
we will be.
They're a rough crowd.
I live across the street.
Oh,
Oh, yes, you do. Yeah.
very good. All right.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you. Next item, review. Well, it says review of bylaws finalized, but unfortunately, we don't have a quorum.
There's only one thing. We were in the
Unless you want to talk about something, we can't vote on it.
Well, we weren't sure you were going to be here. So if there's no chair or vice chair, who's going to run the meeting? Maybe you want a third backup for the backup.
So you want to do like?
Well, I don't know, like if so, because Peter wasn't here. And say you didn't come in, we weren't sure yet. So who would actually run the meeting?
When some boards or committees, the committee chooses.
So you can choose on the spot right there.
That happens
Really?
in some, yeah. Or you could have another designated.
Or we can say that, they can vote. We don't have, whatever, we don't have a quorum. We almost didn't have a quorum and leadership here tonight.
Yes, that would.
So,
assume that
I don't know,
have
do you
a
want a
quorum.
catastrophic cause, or what do we want to do? Do you want to vote? I mean, what if we have an even?
Yeah, or you can designate someone else and whatever works.
Who's gonna be this, so I don't care who it is, citizen or whoever, I don't care, but.
Yeah, I mean, you can put in, that if the chair or the vice chair is
If both are not here,
absent, then the next,
it's not the secretary because they
one of
do
the.
the notes remotely.
Maybe one of the citizen reps can fill the position for that night.
Who's the citizen, one of the citizen reps?
You'd have two, so
That could be a problem too, right? I mean, it could, I don't know if you wanted, I don't think it should be me, but.
No.
Or
I mean,
the
yeah,
the selectman rep,
right.
you don't want it pointed like it's coming from the board, right? Well, we need to think about that. Well, what about the, well, the school also votes, right? So what's this-
Votes, yeah.
Yeah, they could, of course, they're not here tonight either.
Well, Peter-
What an example.
Peter is there, that would be vice chair.
the number of
Both.
citizens representatives, was it
It's here on,
on the warrant article that created the committee? Was it specified?
question.
it's here. If you have it, the
I
purpose.
can look.
Double check, yeah.
Here's the RSA's here.
We either, you could have, as long as you have a odd number,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
you could have more than two.
Okay.
Citizens rep, if it wasn't prescribed by warrant article.
We only have one.
what the committee, then you have more of a chance of having a quorum, is my point.
Right.
You'd have to have three.
And more, I mean, more input isn't a bad thing.
If that's something that's a committee, wants to consider, I certainly, we can take that up at the next meeting, when we have a full board. And, yeah, no, I have no objection to that. Certainly, it's more the merrier.
Well, today there's 5 voting and 4 non-voting.
Okay.
So if you had another citizen, right? It'd be 6 to 4. So long as they're, I'm just
Want
saying.
to know what number?
So you want two.
So you have 2 members from the town of Litchfield, 1 from the planning board, 1 ex officio, 1 school board. So that's 5. And then you have non-voting members, budget, town administrator, school superintendent, NRPC.
Well, I know that that's an ongoing discussion with you guys, right, Brian? I know.
So we have 5, so we need to be careful. And then, of course, the citizens are going above the boards too. You know what I mean? You don't want it all run by citizens either. So here, if here's
Two
a,
citizens,
it's right here, down the bottom, and then the other page is the non.
2 residents,
So we have,
1 selectman, 1 school board, and 1 planning board.
so that's 5.
Right.
So if you had another citizens, 6.
Weren't we debating though,
Whether I should vote or not.
no, whether the budget committee rep should vote?
Well, that's why I mentioned, because I know that.
Yeah, we had.
Vote on it the next
discussion. So.
Okay, because if that happens and then you went to 3
It's not going right.
citizens, you'd be fine.
Right, so they are not, the budget committee did not vote, right, Brian?
No, they're gonna vote the next meeting.
Right. So you'd either need to add 1 citizens rep to replace Ms. Colby, or 3. That's my point.
So-
It would have to be an odd number.
Maybe all 3 of you are joining. So it's a 1 or 3?
Yeah.
But I'll check
Yeah,
the
why don't we check?
warrant article history to see if it was specified on the warrant article when the committee was created, because you can't. I'm assuming it was created by warrant article.
Yeah, in 2014, so yeah,
Yeah.
it says all the
2000.
RSAs, look at the beginning. But then when it gets to the number of members, there's no RSA next to it. Everything's RSA.
Yeah, just
Until you
says
get to
the
that one.
Selectmen shall appoint.
But on the first page, it says 2014 or something that happened.
674-7, Jay? I doubt very much the RSA has the membership.
No, I
This depends on the hierarchy of your company. I
Doesn't
mean, of your
normally.
town.
Doesn't normally have. Michael has his book.
Lawyer, book out. Online RSAs. Isn't it funny how the RSA dropped off right at the number of members though?
Right, because normally the RSA doesn't, I mean, some select board.
It's a concern. We have 3 citizens.
Well,
5.
it's by statute. It's it shall include at least 1 member of the planning board. It may include, but not limited to, other members of the planning board, the budget committee, or the town or city governing body to prepare and amend or recommend a program for capital improvement projects.
So it doesn't list any residents.
It's really, yeah. I mean, it's not limited. It's basically,
We can look at what towns our size do. We can look at the region and see, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is our population now? Are we 8,500, 9,500?
85.
We're 8,500. So we can look at what other towns in our region do if we want to use that as a model, but I'm not speaking for the Board of Selectmen. So you're saying the Board of Selectmen, well, we want to look at the article, right?
Right,
article.
I'll look at.
See
I'll
why
look at
that
the
number came.
article to see.
So if we have, and I'm not, again, I'd say 3 citizens and 4 voting members, if Brian comes on as voting. Okay. I just didn't want more citizens than people on boards, right? Because the citizens are running the, not a bad thing, but I just want to make sure that was the intent. Wow, so we're putting these on, we have to anyway. We can't vote on bylaws tonight anyway.
right. So we'll
Yeah.
table it and for the next meeting we can discuss.
The minutes looked fabulous, by the way. They really did.
Too bad you can't vote on it. They look fabulous.
Great job.
Okay, Next item, I guess, is the review of the 2026 budget calendar from Selectmen and Budget. I guess I'll turn to you, Kim.
So I wanted to include these. In the past. I don't know that we have. So the selectmen finalized their calendar after receiving the budget committees. So the budget calendar is set for when we are going to bring items to the select board, and when the budget will move on to the budget committee. I think one of the things that was most important here was we've been asked to provide warrant articles to the budget committee earlier than we have in the past. So in speaking with the chair of the select board, we have decided to make a running list of warrant articles, some that may or may not include items that are being presented here. And we will let the budget committee have a link to that list so they can see as things will come and go off of it. But I think giving the select board the information that we receive here when we get it will only help facilitate that process. But I wanted everyone to be informed on what the budget calendar looks like.
Anybody have any questions? I think it was, a good thing that we kind of set up our timeline early, so that I think this will help to, facilitate the process and move it forward. And at least having, keeping that in mind with the budget committee timeline. So
It's fair for budget. They can't get that like you did. It's fair for the board of selectmen too, because we need we need public hearings rather. That's just running out of, and there's not enough, meeting rooms. We run out of that.
And
Yeah.
so there was an item that came up in 2021. From what I'm told, there was a list of fire vehicles that was given, and it wasn't provided every year. It was thought by the department that once they presented it, it would stay on the list for the years that they had without them having to resubmit. So I think we need to make that process clear. Either they are resubmitting or they aren't resubmitting, or but one of the vehicles is their emergency truck. It's the truck that goes out most often to all calls. And it's an older truck. It was purchased from Londonderry back in the 80s. And we have a grant that through Clean Fleets that has really good numbers as far as savings of emissions, because back in the day that this truck was made, there was no real emissions concerns, so there was no, I forget the name of the system.
Sure. But I know what you mean.
Yeah, you know what I mean? The one that adds the stuff into the exhaust before it goes out. So we ran the emissions and we got really good numbers, so we decided to apply for the grant. And in fact, I think it will go out tomorrow. But it wasn't on the capital improvement plan. Even though it had in 2021 a 2025 replacement date. So I think in the process of all this, at some point I said we really need to make sure that everything's on the capital improvement plan so that we know when to make purchases or grants or things of that, so that we have everything in mind.
And get the impact fees on.
Right, and get the impact
Right.
fees for it. I just want to make clear, though, that any policy that makes the item be on the CIP plan before it can be purchased or filed for a grant would have to come from the select board. I don't set policy, I just recommend policy.
And so it can be as simple, I think, as just to let us know if, the projects you previously submitted, you want to keep them on as they are.
Right.
Because costs change, sometimes people shift. But yeah,
So I think the form that has been submitted in the past was by project.
Yep.
Maybe we simply want to have another form, maybe like a cover sheet or something that's from the department that says, are there any projects that should come off the list, right? So
Yeah.
if we got the grant, this would have been one that should have come off. Are there projects that should remain or items that should remain? Something.
Yeah.
So that they are letting us know.
And some grants wanted proof that this was a requirement. So if it was on the capital improvement, we could
And I
prove
know I
that it
brought that up at the budget committee meeting because it was presented as far as going with a grant, and I mentioned, well, Mrs. Kleiner just told us at our last CIP meeting, this wasn't gonna happen. And what's odd about it is there's still on the CIP on this form, and this is really where it should be. You still have 2 highway vehicles on here.
Yes.
And I'm not sure why the fire apparatus isn't on here. It was in 21. I mean, why wouldn't it still be on here?
it should be.
It should be.
Right.
It absolutely should.
I'm not sure how it fell off, so I'm just wondering, did anything else on here fall off in like the last 4 years? That should be back on here, whether it's 5 years out, 3 years out, or a want down the road kind of thing. If we're going to put it on here, I think it should just remain.
So I've checked with the town departments after the fire. I do have a list from the fire department of multiple trucks to go back on. Some that fell off, like this truck that we're speaking of.
I'm just wondering if that happened when, I know they'd had conversation of like combining 2 vehicles now into one because the one vehicle could have done the job of
Yes.
both, and if something came off that way.
And I think something
is what
happened
happened.
during COVID or right after COVID where it may have gotten confused. But they've given me a totally updated list, which I can actually submit
I think that is
for
what
our
happened.
next meeting.
Because I do remember there was a lot of conversation around fire trucks and different alternatives and do we get used, and if we get this, then we don't need that, or we can move it. So that's probably when that happened.
And we used the money to purchase the new engine, and so I think somewhere in there things got confused. I'm hopeful for this grant because the new truck will provide us water that isn't on the existing truck. So we'll actually have capacity to carry water, which means that if they are at a medical call and they got a fire call, they could move from one to another without having to come back to the station to grab an engine. So they're of good price right now. Clean Fleets is an excellent grant. That's where we got the highway truck last year. The truck that is on the plan, I think one of them is an international. If everything goes well, we hope to apply for a Clean Fleets grant next year for that truck that's still on CIP.
was going on in 2020, right when COVID started in March. Was it going on? Or did everything, because our fire department went into emergency mode and we're giving shots to people, remember?
Yeah,
So,
I think it did. I think it did
don't know if
continue.
it stopped.
Yeah, I
It
think it
did
did.
continue?
Yeah.
Okay.
Obviously, it was a crazy time.
It was. Maybe they just shifted to look
We
at
may have
other
had remote
emergency problems.
We probably did. I don't remember. And then, of course, we had the following year all the ARPA stuff.
That saved the fire. Or saved our town from paying for that for a new truck.
That's where we got the.
But that was like the main focus, I think, of CIP that year was how do we spend the ARPA funds?
funds. Yeah, that was a
It
big.
was a
thing.
good problem to have.
Everybody got
Having
something.
money.
That's it. Okay, very good. CIP process timeline. Well, it says finalized. Well, we don't have a quorum, so I can't finalize things. But does anyone want to address that, or did we already? Is that something we've just talked about?
I mean, just, we can find the next meeting. I think we more or less have all agreed on the timeline, so.
Okay. Submission forms, Ms. Kleiner, did you have anything about that for the finalization or?
No, I'll ask Mr. McDonald.
No, I think I just need to get you the updated form, so I'll get that to you.
Okay.
Okay,
Before we move on, this
Yeah.
May 5th says review of template. I'm looking at our
that's,
timeline. Which template? Are you talking about the one?
that's the form.
Yeah, that's the
Okay,
form.
so we have to wait until we have a quorum.
Right.
Okay, I just want to make sure we're staying on track with our item.
Do we need to wait to
review
get
that
the
too?
form? So I have
the si-
departments that are
I don't think we need. to
calling
vote
me
on-
daily.
I don't think we need to vote on a form, right?
It's the same form, basically. We'll change the dates.
Did you highlight 2026?
Did we
Did you highlight the
highlight-
6-year?
6 years.
Yeah, well,
Out the next 6 years and
Okay.
tell us of any changes.
I'll send it to everybody. If anybody has any concerns, let us know. But I
Yeah,
don't think we have
just
to vote
out of
on it.
fairness, if,
Yeah.
the other one has any questions. Okay. So it sounds like we're pretty good.
We're on track.
Okay. Any other business this evening? Jay, do you have anything?
I do not.
Tim, anything?
No.
Mr. Chair, before we
Yes,
do
go
adjourn,
ahead.
I'd like to request we go into non-public.
Okay. Well,
And
I think don't we have to have notice
I think
to go into non-public?
we need notice.
I think it would have to be on the,
Yeah.
it'd have to be on the agenda as
Oh.
noticed, and then we could do it. But if it's not on the agenda, I don't think we can just go into non-public. We have to provide notice.
correct.
So, I'm sorry. But if you want, for the next meeting, we can do
We
that,
could.
because we'll have an opportunity. to
Well, I would
notice.
just, again, I'm just gonna make a suggestion. We do have it on there on a regular basis. You don't have to
Okay.
use it.
I could certainly do that
Okay.
That's a good idea.
going forward. Yeah,
Very
great
good.
idea.
I do
Great
that with
idea.
some boards.
Right, very good. I have nothing else this evening, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Well, I can't. I know. Now we're stuck. We can't.
I'm with you in spirit.
You could just
I
declare
guess I
it so.
Just adjourn.
I'll adjourn. Good night, everybody. Thank you.